Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I should say good evening. Welcome to this episode of Through Their Eyes. We're very excited as this episode we will be talking about imposter syndrome as well as the road to self-discovery. And we also have a very special guest today. But before I get into that, I'll go ahead and let my other co-host introduce herself. Anvi, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Unvi. I'm your other co host. And today we're going to be interviewing a very special guest, as Emily's already said. And I will let her just tell us who she is.
Hi, my name's Leah On. I'm a junior currently, and I play clarinet. I'm planning to pursue music into college, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah.
What schools are you thinking about applying to, like for college?
Um, to be honest, right now I haven't thought about any realistic or safety schools.
Mhm.
Um, if I don't know how realistic these are all reach schools, but I'm I really like the programs of schools like Indiana University or Oberlin College and Conservatory. I also recently went to Boston, and I visited New England Conservatory. It's really nice, but it's also incredibly expensive.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That's really cool though. I think you can definitely get in. I have no
yeah.
doubt.
Thank you.
Well, to kick us off on our topic, I wanted to delve in a little bit into like imposter syndrome, just because I know Leon that like your what is it like field might be very competitive. I know that Unbi like prefaced it a little bit with me over the phone, so I think it'd be really interesting to kind of go into that, like how imposter syndrome may play a like part in that, and also just generally how like imposter syndrome just can be seen across like any sort of like competitive like sport or field. I feel like it's something that's very prominent. Like I know for me, what is it like in the lab that I'm a part of? I'm also like looking to apply like for graduate school. Like I'm in college now, but I remember one of our grad student assistants had told me that like basically like everyone in graduate school has like imposter syndrome. And that was like really interesting to me because I was like, oh wow, like I never really realized how prevalent it was. I thought it was just something that was super specific to me where I'm always like where I always get imposter syndrome where I'm always like, am I good enough? Like and all this and like just that sort of like rhetoric internally. But to hear how widespread it is was really fascinating to me. And I think afterwards, I kind of started thinking about it more in depth and I realized how common imposter syndrome is just across the board, honestly. And anywhere that's perceived as like competitive or just highly selective, it's just incredibly widespread. And I was wondering if you could touch base on how you deal with imposter syndrome or how you just generally experience it or how you've seen like your peers experience it.
Yeah, I think I would be surprised if there are any music students out there who don't go through imposter syndrome, since music is an art and you can't really perfect an art if that makes sense. It's very subjective. So there's always room for you to improve. Like for me, I it's pretty rare for me to feel satisfied with what I'm doing, especially during performances. Like I'll listen back to a performance and I'll be like, I could have done so much better. Um, but honestly, I've just kind of accepted that imposter syndrome will be part of my life. Um, I think that it's okay if if I'm not perfect or anything, because what matters to me is that I'm always improving in some way. Like I don't think I'm ever going to become worse as a musician. So sometimes I'll listen back to my old videos of myself playing and just remind myself that I have grown, even if I'm not perfect right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great, Leah. Oh, sorry. But I just wanted to ask you one thing. So, how has the pressure of, just being as good as you are made your imposter syndrome, worse? Like, you have so many achievements and awards, and how exactly has all of this really impacted you as not only a player, but as a person?
Well, honestly, I've become a little scared to perform in public or just play in front of colleagues or friends because I feel as if they have some sort of preset expectation of me just because of what they've heard. So, yeah, whenever it's a little bit embarrassing for me if I mess up or anything because I feel like I have to reach this expectation that others of me might have. Except, um, I they might not even care that much. Like, I think most people don't really care about that much about how good you're gonna be. Like, um, I don't they don't really mind if I'm not perfect or anything. So I think it's just some in general anxiety that I have.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really interesting that you kind of touched base on a little bit is just the whole like idea of like perfection. And I know that you said that you kind of like accepted that like what is it? Not everything will be like completely like perfect. And I think honestly like the whole concept of perfectionism has really kind of gone really far in like very competitive fields. I think that striving for perfectionism just kind of almost it just adds an unnecessary pressure to people, and I feel like sometimes it can kind of suck out the enjoyment of just simply doing something that you're passionate about because you feel almost pigeonholed in a sense where you want to fit into this very, very specific and nearly unattainable box because like you were saying, like even people like yourself who have like these amazing accolades, like there's still like no like true perfection. I feel like ultimately like it's like I feel like true perfection is just like impossible. Like even the most beautiful things will always have some sort of flaw. And I feel like that's part of the beauty of it. I feel like, what is it? Just having that realism and that touch of realism is just what makes things so poetic in a sense. I feel like true perfection is something that can really only be like generated by something like AI. And even then, it doesn't have that like sentimental and like human touch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially if I'm listening to like electronic files of, let's say, like clarinet playing, it just doesn't sound the same as a real professional who's playing, or anybody who's playing, because it just doesn't have that same quality, I guess. Like, I know there's a lot of recordings out there that are not perfect, but they still have some sort of soul, and I think that's what's really beautiful about it.
Mm.
Mhm.
So then would you say that the imperfections that every musician seems to have makes their music? Like them being insecure about themselves and then using that to make sure they practice more and then they get better at playing helps them develop their own like specific sound, their own specific genre and helps them grow as a person. Would you say that's true or would you say it's something different?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty true. Um, Everybody's a little different in some way. Like, I know there's a lot of different types of tone qualities on the clarinet, and I wouldn't say any of them are right or wrong. They just are. Like, it's okay to be different and stuff. So everybody might have their own idea of perfectionism, but the that's not like a universal idea, if that makes sense.
I know I feel like well, it sounds like you've come to a place where, like, you've accepted that, like, what is it? There's no sense of, like, true, like, idyllic, like, perfectionism, and, it seems like you have, like, a pretty good, like, handle on the way that you, like, approach, like, the competitiveness of, like, what is it, music, and I was wondering how that compares to when you first started out. Like, when you, like, first started, what is it, like, what is it, playing, like, competitively, was it more so where you felt compelled to be perfect, or how did you deal with the pressure then?
Um, I guess I did feel a little bit pressured to be perfect because you never know. At the time when I was starting out, I didn't know how other people would play. So I just assumed if I get it as good as I possibly can, then I will probably do like somewhat well. You never know how other people are going to play. And my teacher always told me to never underestimate my competition, which I think is a pretty good piece of advice because even if you're trying your best out there, there's a lot of other people who are also putting in the same amount of effort, if not more. So, yeah. But I've also just accepted it's okay if you're not like the best at all times because, well, there's always going to be someone better than you. And that can be a good thing. Like, I think whenever there's someone better than me, I try to look up to them instead of feeling insecure about myself because
That's
it helps me. It can help me grow too. Like I always like having someone who I can ask for advice.
I think that's a really mature thought pattern to kind of see people who like you feel or perceive as like better than you in some aspect as what is it, inspiration as opposed to like competition. I feel like a lot of times like people will see like somebody who they feel like has a quality that they don't, and instead of feeling inspiration they feel more so jealousy because it's like for them it's more so like why don't I have that. And I think that's really interesting because I think ultimately if we want to achieve something it's we have to strive to get to that point. And I think with jealousy it's like we don't see what is it, the hard work that that person puts like behind what they're doing, and we don't see the effort behind it, we just see the results. And I think solely like seeing that result is what kind of invokes that jealousy in people because um, they don't realize that like it can be attainable for them too. So I think kind of like your vantage point and taking inspiration and trying to like what is it, find out how you can also like get to that level is very mature, and I think it's very introspective, and I think more people should kind of develop that what is it, that like thought pattern as well.
hmm I actually used to feel jealousy towards people who were better than me, especially last year. It took me a while to get to this point, and it was mostly due to events last year where a lot of people I was very often surrounded by people who were better than me. And I would feel a little bit upset or discouraged because they always seemed like so perfect, like, and I felt like I was noticeably worse than them. And it also made me feel a little bit stressed out about how other people would see me because I was worried that other people would think I was not as good because they would always hear people who were better than me. But after a point, I just realized like it's okay because everybody always has room to improve, and I'm sure those people who were better than me, they've worked very hard to get to where they are at. And honestly, I feel like now since a year has passed, I can say that I am as good as they were last year. So that makes me really happy because I'm improving.
So, Leah, would you say that taking inspiration and then just looking at it in a more healthy mindset has definitely improved, your way of thinking? But would you also say, that this has helped you overall, like with your mental health and just helped you in other aspects as well?
Um, yeah, especially since for me, well, since I'm trying to become a music major, well, it's important to be a good musician, but it's also important to be a good student and get good grades. And since I mostly prioritize my music, I often my grades are kind of set to the side. So and since a lot of people in my class are really smart, I do I guess I get insecure about that sometimes too. But I just well, you can always if there's people better than you can always ask them for help. I always try to remind myself of that because that just means that you have room to for improvement, that um you can ask these people who are better than you for help on how to improve. So I think it's been useful for other parts of my life too.
I think it's really interesting, like you mentioning, what is it, being surrounded by like people who are like successful and like asking them for advice. I think typically I like in terms of like work, I always hear that you should surround yourself. Like I think like the colloquial saying is more so like dress for the job that you want. And I'm kind of like taking that and like into my own interpretation. But I know people also say that you should surround yourself with people that you want to be like. So I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that like people in your classes are typically very successful because I've always heard that being surrounded in an environment or being immersed in an environment like that is typically helpful to people because it makes them want to be better. When you're around people who aren't motivated, it's demotivating. And if you're already the best in that circle, you won't necessarily feel the need to what is it do better because you're already the best in that circle. But when you're in like a circle where like people are generally successful and they are constantly working towards a goal, it's better for you because you see that and then you want to be like that. It motivates you. So I think in that sense, competition can be healthy, but I think where it gets unhealthy is when it gets to the point of like constant comparison. But I think it's really admirable that you've come to a point where like your mindset has shifted from what is it like, oh, it's like demotivating that like they're better to, well, I know that I have like the talent and I know that I can too if I put in the work. So let me ask them and then what is it? Like do better based off their advice. I think it's really like I know I said that earlier, but truly I think it's a really good mindset to have. And I think it's something that a lot of people lack. And I think that's why I think that's one of the prime reasons why people get demotivated a lot of the time.
Thank you. I realized that um sometimes being the best all the time isn't really it's not great because it feels like you don't really have room to go up, if that makes sense. Like I I guess it's just more fun for me to have someone that I can look up to or someone who's at like a similar level to me because it's just nice having some I guess you can relate to people who I feel as if I can relate to more to people who are actually motivated about music because they share like similar interests for me. Like I recently met somebody who is a really great clarinet player, and is only like a year older than me. And it's actually nice. It's actually really fun to play with him because we both we've both put in effort and we're both motivated to become better. So yeah,
Would you say that it's a little unmotivating to see people who are really good, but they don't put in effort and they don't put in work? They're more of just there to, play their instrument and they're working hard, but they're not really in it for music itself.
yeah. I actually met someone like that last year who it felt like he never tried, but he was just always perfect anyway. And I guess that might have been part of the reason I felt some imposter syndrome last year. Um, but when I think back to it, he probably practiced a lot when he was younger, so he just got his skill level up before, and now that he's pretty good, and he just doesn't feel the need to practice as much. So I always like when you see someone sight reading really well, like playing something new for the first time, but they're playing it perfectly. It's because they've sight read before and they've probably failed at sight reading earlier, and they've just been practicing that. So like there is like if someone learns a piece in like 2 hours, where it would take another person like a month to learn that same piece, it's because that first person has a lot more experience behind that, if that makes sense.
I think it like sometimes for people can be really discouraging when they like have a peer who like they see like or like seems like they're perfect like without even trying. And I think a lot of people they see stuff like that and it's like discouraging. But I think sometimes like even if somebody has like a natural like disposition for something, I don't necessarily think it means that what is it like a person like as an example, like another individual, like what is it, who may not have like the same intrinsic like talent, like can't get to that level. I think sometimes like it's not necessarily about what is it, I think sometimes it's more so about, like, how you get there as opposed to the result. I feel like you can always get the same end result, but I think different people just kind of take different routes. So I think, like, sometimes, like, even if somebody is, like can actually, like, master something, like, instantaneously, like, even if it takes another person, like, a little bit longer, I think it's alright just because I feel like individuals are inherently different, and I think sometimes you just need to take a different road to get from point A to point B. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes that road isn't necessarily linear, sometimes it zigzags, but you're still getting to that same end result. And I think I feel like kind of like when people see that it might be easier for another person, like they get very discouraged as well. And I can imagine that adds to the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I always just try to remind myself that nobody is really perfect and that they've all and anybody who seems like that has absolutely they've put in the hours,
Mm,
they've put in a lot of work, and that once I put in at the same amount of effort, or maybe not even the same amount, because some people just learn slower.
yeah.
Maybe, but like I can get to that point at some point.
Yeah. Did you ever have like a turning point or like a moment where you were like, "Oh wow, like I'm not the only person who has imposter syndrome. Like this is literally like something that's really common for like me and my peers." Like have you ever had like a situation that kind of like was like a light bulb moment in that sense?
Um, I think it was more gradual for me.
Mm,
Like, um, I remember I used to. I think it just took me a while to reshape my mindset by continuously going out and meeting other musicians who are also really talented in their own regard. And but other musicians are also like really friendly. And I talked to some of them about like feeling insecure about their own abilities. And a lot like most musicians do feel the same way. Like they feel as if they're not good enough. And I guess it just makes it easier for me to feel less insecure if I know that other people are feeling the same way. I know that sounds weird, but yeah.
I get what you're saying. Like it's kind of like, I'm literally reiterating what you're saying, but yeah, that feeling of just feeling less alone. I think sometimes it's important to know that you're not the only one that is going through something. I feel like that offers people a lot of consolation, just knowing that you're not alone in a struggle. Because I think sometimes when you're kind of going through something and you feel like alone, you feel like you're alone, it makes you feel as though you're like on an entirely different planet from everybody else. But I feel like once you see that other people are dealing with the same thing that you are, it's almost grounding in a sense. You're like, okay, wow, like this isn't just me.
Yeah. It's definitely easier to talk to people who you relate to. Like, it's really nice when I get to talk to other people about imposter syndrome like you guys. So, because then I feel as if my ideas are like they're shared by other people and that other people can relate to them. So, yeah.
So back to the whole thing of, just overcoming imposter syndrome and whatnot. To anyone who is experiencing imposter syndrome, especially if they're a musician, what would you tell them? Especially people who are getting into the competitions like all district, all state, whatnot, summer camps.
Um, well, I would tell them that it's really okay if you're not the best. Like, sometimes it seems like a big deal, but it's really not. And you can it's actually I think it's better for you if you're not the best because then you can learn from other people who are better than you or even those who are not performing as well in competitions because in the end um when I audition for things such as all district and all state, I'm doing it more for the experience, not to get the title, if that makes sense. Because you always get because if you make it, you get into a nice like, clinic where you get to learn a lot. So in the end, it's really about what you learn, and it's not about how well you do, if that makes sense.
I think that's a really great sentiment. I think when people go into what is it like things for the right reason and more so for the experience and just wanting to cultivate more knowledge, I think that ultimately will serve you more. And I think almost in a way it will make you perform even better because you're not putting all this unnecessary pressure. You're not putting all this unnecessary pressure on yourself. You're kind of going into things with the headspace of, okay, I'm passionate about this and I want to learn. And in turn, I feel like that almost what is it is better for performance than trying to pigeonhole yourself into perfection and trying to stay within the parameters of what you think is right. I think when you go into things with kind of like an open mindset, that's better for you. I'm kind of reiterating what you're saying, but I think that's a really important what is it way of thinking that I feel like more people should adopt.
Hmm. Yeah. It's definitely more interesting to meet with other people. Like when I audition for these clinics, another great aspect is that you get to meet other people and make new friends. Maybe like talk about your experiences.
Yeah.
So it's a very it's a pretty diverse group of people from different areas, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah. Well, as we're approaching on the last few minutes of our interview, are there any other like final things that you want to say? I was just going to add that I think all the points that you've made are really great. I think honestly that like going into things with more so of like an open heart and an open mind is better for performance at the end of the day. And I think learning to deal with like imposter syndrome and just learning to kind of look at things from more of like a self-improvement aspect when it comes to competitiveness is a lot better and easier on people's mindsets. I think all the unnecessary pressure is something that we've been conditioned to think is normal, but I think altering your mindset is really important. But yeah, do you have any final like thoughts or comments or anything like that?
Um, Another thing is that, well, I like to tell myself this a lot, and it might sound a little funny, but I'm still young and I've got ways to go. And I'm sure most people who are watching this are also young. Like, it's so you don't need to be perfect right now. You can be perfect like maybe when you're like your 50s or something. But right now it's really okay because you got many more years to go.
I
Yeah.
think I think that's a really great sentiment. I think in our teens, in our early 20s, like I feel like the spotlight is just so heavily put on us. I actually heard this phrase the other day that I thought was really interesting. I forgot who said it or where I heard it, but it was like this 26-year-old lady, and she was saying how she feels younger now than when she felt in her late teens and her early 20s. And she said that because the reason why she felt that way was because she didn't have the unnecessary pressure that all the like excess pressure that she had in her late teens and like early 20s, because everyone was always asking her like what schools are you applying to, like what are you going to do with the rest of your life, like it was just all this pressure. And I think that's really interesting. But yeah, like I think you make a great point. Like we literally have the rest of our lives ahead of ourselves, so we don't have to stress out about being perfect. Like literally right now.
Yeah. I feel like we as high schoolers, since we're trying to get into colleges and stuff, we're we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be great and have great achievements or to be better than everybody or to have it all figured out. But there's there's a lot that happens after college too. And just in general, life is I know people say life is short, but it is, but it's also pretty long at the same time. Like I've only experienced around like 16 years, so and
Yeah.
that's it's felt a lot longer than it has been. So yeah, you've got everybody's got a pretty long way to go.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah. Anvi, do you have any final thoughts, comments?
Well, I'm just really happy that Leah agreed to come on this podcast, especially a little bit last minute. But she's actually given me a lot of great advice for the time that I've known her. And this is literally just a platform for her to share all the great advice she's given me. I think with Leah's help, I've also, tried to grow as a musician myself and implemented some of the things that she's told me, like stop comparing yourself, look up to people, inspiration and whatnot. Because those are actually things that have helped me as a musician myself, to become better and at least attempt to do things not for the chair or not for the award, but to just do it because I like playing music. Because at the end of the day, music is all we are really doing. So
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Leon. Like it honestly means a lot, and you've shared so much. And honestly, like Anvi was saying, you actually have a lot to say. And I think, thank you a lot for coming on. I think kind of giving you a platform to share what you know, what you feel is really important. I think it's something that can really benefit a lot of people, like within our age range.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been really fun to talk about all this.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Have a good night, Leah.
Good
You
night.
too.
Okay, everybody. Now we're going to get started with our next segment. We're going to be talking about science and recent developments in science. And this is something that I proposed for our segment, which I thought was really interesting. I mentioned this a little bit earlier to Unvi because I've seen a lot of videos about it and I know like some about it. And I think what really interests me more than anything are the implications of this specific thing. So I guess I'll just tell everybody instead of kind of doing so much buildup. I wanted to go in and discuss the Tesla bots, which I thought were really interesting. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with them as I've seen them all over the news, all over social media recently. They're essentially robots by Elon Musk, and they're meant to do just essentially any like household like purpose, like whether it's like nanny your kids or what is it, like wash the dishes, fold laundry, like they do a lot. I think as their purpose listed as all purpose. Um, I believe they retail for about 20 to 30,000, so they cost about the same amount as a car. It's really interesting, and I actually just saw, I believe it was his launch event. That's what they call those types of events where he discussed what they do, their purpose, and he also presented them. I saw a couple of them like being bartenders, which is really interesting to see a robot wearing like a hat and like mixing drinks. I thought that was really funny. And um they were also serving like appetizers and like hors d'oeuvres, which is crazy. And they also talk. Like they have voices. Yeah, which is insane to me. But I think a lot of people, or at least like on TikTok, are comparing it to like iRobot. Like I'm not sure if you know what that movie is, Envy, but it's like really like I actually haven't seen the movie myself because I believe like Will Smith starred in it. Maybe that was just like before my time. I don't know, but I thought it was very interesting. But yeah, I think a lot of people are just talking about how like crazy it is and how they don't want like a robot in their home and all of that. And I don't know, like I have mixed feelings about it. But Envy, do you have like any thoughts about that specifically? Like, what do you think about the Tesla bots?
Honestly, I don't know about you, Emily. Actually, I know I do. We were talking about before, we got on the podcast, we were talking about how many cyber trucks we've been
Oh
seeing,
yeah.
and I've noticed that it's mostly along the East Coast, which is where me and Emily are from. There's so many cyber trucks all over, and there's, like, a bunch of Teslas. Like, I remember counting one time when I like, a road trip with my family, I counted 16 Teslas in 2 hours, which is not that many compared to what you usually see, but the Tesla takeover is what I'm choosing to call it, and that's
Tesla
just
takeover is
crazy.
insane.
No, because Alexas and Echo Dots and these robo vacuums, all of the new tech that's occurring, and it's like they're spying on us. I'm betting money they're spying on us. And it's just dealing with so much AI in your home. I personally wouldn't want a robo anything because what if it's spying on me? What if it's giving my data away? So I don't know, but some people really just want efficiency over, time wastage. But then again, those Tesla bots can't really fold clothes that fast now, can they, Emily?
Yeah, no, I was talking about that earlier because I think I watched one of the memos that they were giving, and the Tesla bot was like folding clothes, and they fold clothes like how they teach like retail workers to fold clothes. You know what I'm talking about, where they make it into like a little square. And it's
Yeah.
so funny because like they fold clothes so slowly. And I remember I saw this on like a TikTok post, and all the comments were like, if I give them a load of laundry and then go to work, they'll still be on the same load of laundry when I come back. I was like, oh my gosh. I thought it was really funny, but I don't know, I guess in that way they're not as efficient, but I'm really curious about the people who would buy Tesla Bot just to have it nanny their kids. Like that's what I
Yeah.
find really, I think that for me is like more like concerning than something that I take in jest. I think the fold and clothes thing I found really funny, but the nanny thing, I mean, I'm not sure how prevalent this specific issue would be that I was thinking about when I like saw that whole thing, but I think the main concern for me would just be like if a parent works constantly and then I don't know, like they have a Tesla bot and then like their Tesla bot is essentially like feeding their children and like, basically being with their children like a third or two-thirds of the day during their formative years. I'm really curious to see how that would pan out, especially with like toddlers who get attached to their caretakers very strongly. I'm curious to see like how they would emotionally bond to something like a literal robot who's devoid of emotion.
Yeah, no, I think there's another thing, like, a lot of people are actually very emotionally attached, like, I don't even know what the term is, but it's like imprinting. They imprint on their robot vacuum, and a lot of people are actually talking about how when their robot vacuum breaks, these companies have this thing where they don't replace the robot, they fix the robot because so many people are imprinted already on these vacuums. And they're basically just like taking AI and then treating it as a part of their family, because humans will essentially imprint on anything if given the chance. So I feel like especially with a toddler in their formative years, I feel like the imprinting would be extremely like strong and prevalent. So I just wonder what happens when that thing breaks or what happens when that thing does something terrible and they have to get rid of it. How would that affect the child's development? How would it affect their relationship with their family, with their environment, XYZ, you know?
The whole imprinting thing reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, like Her with Joaquin Phoenix, the guy who played Joker and like the most like recent like Joker movie. Have you seen that or no?
I I haven't seen that. I wanna watch it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Do you know like the whole like premise, like the whole plot of it? I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'll give like a little bit just so like the audience also has context as well.
Yeah.
It's essentially about the our protagonist is Joaquin Phoenix and he what is it works at like a card writing company, so he writes like what is it like birthday cards, like he's like the person who writes like like oh no, he would write like letters. That's what he would write. Like people would kind of hire him to write like a birthday letter for like their loved one and that's what his job was. And they came out with these robots. They don't have like physical bodies or anything like that. I think they're kind of like I forgot how they access them, but essentially it's AI that has a conscious. So it has a conscience. So the way that it is like it starts off kind of like baseline and then the more that you teach it and the more that like it learns like it grows like a person and it grows from it like takes its past experiences and it learns from them. So it's like really interesting. Yeah, and they develop their own personalities as well. So,
Oh,
like, this
wow.
whole thing yeah, and I remember, the main character, I forget what his name is, but I'm just gonna call him Joaquin Phoenix, that's the actor's name. I remember he ended up over time, like, falling in love with his, like, robot, and it was, like, this whole thing, and I remember they got recalled. A lot of them got recalled because a lot of people were, like, getting very, very attached and even romantically attached to their, like, AI bot, their robot bot. So, like, they literally, like, were taking them away, and it was, like, this whole thing, and it's just very interesting because it's one of those things where it's, like, at least for me, like, it's just such a moral gray area because it's just something that, like, I don't even know how you would even treat a situation like that. Like, what do you even do in a situation like that?
Yeah, because like, they're human, but they're not human. They have the entire traits of a human being. They have the morality of one, but at the same time, they're programmed to have the morality of a human. It's a whole, like, humanity issue that I don't even know how you would even begin to get into, but it's also, like, so confusing because it's like, what if people begin to opt for robots, you know? And like, yes, we have a population increase and whatnot, and it is getting more and more interesting. But I wonder if we did have that in real life currently at this time, would people opt to have, if they could afford it, more robot people relationships because they can choose the personality of said partner and it could be like an ideal partner and so they would be less inclined to actually fall in love romantically with another person.
You know what that
Is that
reminds me of?
example?
Have you seen on, like, Facebook or, like I don't think it's a Facebook specifically, I think it's, like, the entire, like, Meta um, what is it? Social media apps where you can like talk to a celebrity. I don't know if they still have it or not. Have you seen that where like they'll mimic a celebrity's voice and you can like call them and you can text with them and they're kind of like programmed to see like say like phrases that that person would. I
That's
think they
the
have it.
character AI thing. That's like they have the little character AI bots, and then they'll have like Selena Gomez, and then it'll be Selena Gomez's like face, voice, hair, everything. And she'll be saying the same phrases. She'll know all of the drama. She'll know like she's programmed to know everything about Selena lore. And she will just like I'm calling her a she. See, this is how far gone I am. But the robot will essentially mimic the entirety of that celebrity and people can like call it up or people can like text it and it will respond just like Selena Gomez.
Yeah,
So
and
it's so
it's
interesting.
scary. It's scary because I feel like that kind of perpetuates this whole issue that people have with parasocial relationships. I think that a lot of people, especially in this day and age, they have a big problem with parasocial relationships where they get attached to like somebody that they like view that they see on YouTube or TikTok and they feel like they know that person. And I feel like that's also really notable like through like cancel culture especially I feel like even when, like, a celebrity, like, does something that's not, like I feel like even, like, if a celebrity does something that rubs people the wrong way, like, a lot of people get angry and, like, in their mindset, like, they do something that kind of deviates from like the image that they have of them and they get angry at them for that reason. Which is like sometimes like crazy to me because I'm just like you don't know that person. So it's like you can't necessarily say in what way they would act. Do you know what I mean? It's like of
Yeah.
course, it's important to hold people accountable when they do something wrong, but I think it's something, like, on a smaller scale that's just, like, natural human mistake or error, and people get upset over something like that. I feel like that is, like, really, like, a strong indicator of parasocial relationships because it's like, you don't know this person. Why are you, like, pigeonholing holding them to, like, a specific image you have of them? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like people are gonna act different, what is it, off camera than they do on camera. Like, most of these, like, influencers and celebrities, like, they do put on a facade for the camera because they know what gets them views and they know, how to work the algorithm. So it's, like, crazy to me when people, like, develop these parasocial relationships because 'cause I'm just like, "Why?" Like, you see maybe, like, 1/8 of their entire character spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Like, cancel culture especially is caused by these people, like these stands. And then for our viewers who don't know what stands are, they're essentially extremely obsessive people who are mostly just, stalkers or whatnot about celebrities, but it's like really these stands and these obsessed people. And the thing is, this isn't new. This has been happening ever since Justin Bieber. Like, if you remember, like Justin Bieber, everyone was crazy for him. Everybody was like, "I want to know his home address." Like the whole Haley Bieber thing, like how she was stalking him and everything. She was a stan, and it's like that parasocial relationship. Um, is just insane, especially because we use Haley Bieber again as like an example, she copies like all of Selena's things. And it's like she, looks at Selena in a very specific way and tries to mimic that because of course Selena isn't everything that she appears to be on camera, but Haley, ever since she was younger, has tried to mimic that in order to, get Justin's love, which is really terrifying on levels I just can't comprehend.
Yeah, the whole concept of stands and parasocial relationships is just really like insane. I mean, I feel like it also derives from a place of like loneliness for like a lot of people. I think a lot of time like I think Gen Z, like I think our like stats for like depression and anxiety and like isolation are pretty high. And I think that kind of perpetuates the whole like parasocial relationship thing because I think people kind of crave that, like, connection, and, like, they kind of try to attain it in the only way that they know how, like, through the people that they spend time with, and by spend time with, I mean, like, spend time watching videos about or, um, watching their content. So it's like yeah, no, I think that tying that back all into the Tesla bots, like, circling way back to when we were talking about that, I think it's really, like, interesting, and honestly, it's, like, a little bit nerve-wracking too because it's, like, we don't really know. I think the whole advancement of AI is very interesting, but I think how human morality and emotion ties into it is where we see a lot of issues because, just because we have, like, the resources to further technological advancement, I don't necessarily think it means that we should take that on because I think that some people just aren't ready for that, and I think most people honestly aren't ready for that, like, leap.
Yeah, I feel like right now we're really just struggling with the ethics of, AI. Like I remember I told my father I wanted to go into law and he was like, "Okay, but robots can take over a lot of these humanity jobs. Robots can take over these things." Because in like some way, I guess they could, but there's no ethical way that they really should be able to take over because, humans, we have a specific morality that, even the most logical people will still have some sense of morality, some sense of that humanity that we all look for. As like Leah said, you can't have robotic music. You can't have these robotic things because it doesn't bring that humanity into it. And humanity is one of the most beautiful and most terrifying things. But if we just have robots, which is honestly just terrifying, there's no humanity to balance it out. There's no good to balance out the bad. And that's why I'm just concerned about if we do progress, as you said, Emily, maybe we aren't ready for it. We probably aren't. And if we're not ready for it, what are we gonna do?
No, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, I really like how you're saying the whole humanity. I really like what you're saying about the whole humanity aspect. I think the whole point of life is literally having life. like having people who are alive and feel and think and can formulate their own thoughts and opinions. And I think as much as you try to replicate that in something else, it's at the end of the day, it's artificial and it doesn't have that same intrinsic beauty as it does when it's truly organic, as it would be with a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll just wrap up with that for this segment and we can move on to media. But do you have any other final thoughts that you want to say about this?
No, I think you wrapped it up pretty perfectly, but
Thank
as
you.
we're going to our next segment, the media segment, I just wanna say that Over the Garden Wall is a show
I
I
was
was
going to
trying to
bring
get
that up.
Emily to watch, but she has not watched it yet. But for all of our viewers and for Emily, I wanted to talk about Over the Garden Wall. So it's essentially this short mini series comprised of 10 episodes, and it basically talks about these two boys being lost into this place called the unknown. And I will spoil it a tiny bit. The place they're in is like purgatory. So they almost die and they're in this place where they aren't completely dead yet, but they aren't really alive. They're in this comatose state, and that is the unknown. We Some people argue it's purgatory, some people argue it's not. It's a whole thing. But basically, there's an antagonist, and that's the beast. And he essentially tries to make sure that these two brothers lose hope. And when they lose hope, they'll eventually lose their life and they'll lose their humanity. And by losing humanity, you're already dead. And so what they do is they defeat the antagonist to stay alive. And that's just a very intrinsic, channel of not channel, but I would get a series of events. There we are. And it's so cozy and nice and wonderful, like great for children and whatnot. But at the same time, for older people, it's like, wow, that was really deep. And it's inspired by Dante's Inferno. So it's a whole thing, but I think it's Dante's Inferno. I'm not even sure. There are some aspects of Dante's Inferno in there. But Emily, thoughts on that?
Honestly, that sounds really cool. I was gonna say that sounds really cool. I love anything like that that's very like existential, very like pensive. I'm trying to think of another adjective to describe it, but that
Gravity
whole
Falls ish.
you said what? Yeah, Gravity Falls-ish. Oh, you know I love Gravity Falls. I think I've told you that I love Gravity Falls. I love
Yeah.
cartoons. Yeah, I love anything that's sort of otherworldly in that sense. I'm trying to think of well, I haven't really been watching a whole lot of like movies or shows recently just because I've been very locked into the semester, unfortunately. But I will say that I don't know whether you've ever watched Pan's Labyrinth before. It's really interesting.
I don't
I
think I
feel,
have. I should
I feel
watch
like I feel like you might like that. It's really interesting. It's sort of like a similar vibe. Spirited Away, I feel like also gives like a similar vibe. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love Studio Ghibli.
Anyway, it's really good.
Yeah, Spirited Away is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not sure how many of the people in our audience are familiar with Studio Ghibli, but they produce honestly some of the best like movies. I love them. I think it's Japanese, no? Or am I wrong?
I I think it is Japanese. Our band director, me and Leah's band director, he actually likes their music so much that
Oh,
our
thank you.
previous concert last year was literally like we had Princess Mononoke and some other pieces in there too. So it was really fun. And no, I just love Studio Ghibli, and so does our band director, apparently.
I feel like Studio Ghibli is one of those rare, like they're that like group that like is very rare in the sense that they produce movies or just films in general that I feel like all age like groups really enjoy. Because I'll like talk to people who are like 10, 15 years older than me and they're like, oh, I love Studio Ghibli. And then like I'll talk to like people who are a few years younger than me, like you, and they like Studio Ghibli. And then like all my friends, like we like Studio Ghibli. So it's like it literally just unites people. Like Spirited Away, Ponyo, My Neighbor Totoro, like it's just they make amazing movies. I actually have a little My Neighbor Totoro tote bag, which I
Really?
yeah, I
Oh my
do.
god. Yeah.
Really cute. I bought
No.
them from like a little gift shop. Yeah.
No, but I find that so interesting how like media, especially, as we have more technology, yeah, it does bring some interesting ethical debates into the picture, but it also brings more like widely accessible media. I remember our first show our opener, I was talking a lot about AP Euro and I was talking about, the printing press and how that got ideas around. This is like the modern day printing press. We're getting all of the ideas around. And it's like now we're building media that's impactful and it really just show our society's morals and our I guess our moral compass, our ethics. Because, as we have more and more media, especially more widespread media, it really shows how more people are, trying to figure out what they are morally and how we are as a society dealing with those morals. And it's also just showing us, what we like and what we dislike. And I guess Studio Ghibli is something we like. And it does, I remember in Spirited Away, it was like their parents were gluttons turned into pigs, and then she was like trying to figure out how to get home and everything. And it was just like, oh my god, that's a debate. Like, why are humans so greedy? Why are humans so like XYZ? But it has like all of these different moral debates and all of these like different ways of representing humanity that I just find really interesting.
No, I agree, and I think also, like, Studio Ghibli, like, specifically, like, Spirited Away specifically, they, like I think, at least for me, this is how I interpreted it, but I forget what the little girl's name is. I should know it because my iPad's, like, what is it, screensaver, like, the wallpaper is literally, like, the little girl from Spirited Away, like, guys, I cannot, like, say it enough, I love Studio Ghibli, like, my wallpaper is literally, like, the little girl from Spirited Away, like, eating the little, like, dim sum bun, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And, like,
I actually
staring off into the water. That's what my iPad wallpaper is.
No, I actually forgot what her name is, and I feel so bad, but I've only watched that movie twice. Uh, and it was both when I was, like, jet lagged. I was jet lagged in Britain, so I don't remember anything, but it
Yeah,
it was it was fun. I remember that. I remember
like,
that part.
I think the point that I was trying to make is that, I think Studio Ghibli does a good Spirited Away does a good job of depicting, like, a child's innocence, like, how the little girl was the one who was trying to save her parents despite, like, their sin, like, being gluttonous, and I think it's really beautiful because I think at least in my perspective, I feel like children are, like, their intrinsic way of being is just kind and pure. And I think ultimately, like the only reason why they would act in a way that deviates from that is because of what they're demonstrated, just because they are extremely impressionable. But I think it's very beautiful to kind of see like a child's like pure heart, what does it drag her from like a cumbersome situation and also feel the need to take her parents with her as well. Like even though their actions are the ones that put them in that situation. I thought that
Yeah.
was beautiful.
100%. I remember I was watching this show, it's called She-Ra, but it's like I guess, like, for our older viewers, you'd know He-Man, She-Ra. They made a reboot, and it's more, like, for the newer generation, but basically, Adora, who is She-Ra, essentially, she is, like, raised by the Horde, and they're basically indoctrinating her to believe that what they're doing isn't evil and isn't bad, but it really is. It's destroying, like, the world. But she's been indoctrinated for such a long time that it takes, like, so long for her to really just not sorry, not it takes her not that much time to overcome it, but her friend Katra, it takes her a long time to really just overcome, you know, all of those teachings because she believes that she's right. She believes that what she's been taught is correct and that, her friend has just gone down the wrong path and is too stubborn to really just, come back. But in reality, her friend somehow was able to, undo that indoctrination and go to the right side, the quote unquote correct moral side, while the other one was left behind and then had to eventually, come to that conclusion. But I just find it so interesting how I guess media I guess it is because I don't have much time, but sometimes media doesn't portray how long it really does take to change or to, change your perspective, to become a better person, to evolve or whatnot. It's very quick.
No, I agree. I think it's like you were saying, just because like they don't have the time to, just because it's kind of hard to express what is it like how much time actually goes by in like 90 to like yeah like in 90 minutes to like 2 hours. But I'm trying to think of what other media should we talk about music too? I think like what we've been listening to lately. I feel like that'd be kind of fun.
That would be fun. Oh my god, you go first.
I'm trying to think. Hold on. Let me open my Spotify so I can talk about what I've been listening to lately. When I was coming back from class, I was listening to Conan Gray. I love
Of course,
Conan.
Conan Gray. He literally talks about the mental state of the modern day youth.
The bourgeoisie. Doesn't he like talk about that? I swear he has a song called The Bourgeoisie's is. And it's on his
That's
new
amazing.
album. Did I say that so wrong?
No, it's just that's so funny. I don't listen to him that often, so hearing a title like that, that's so intriguing. But, like, certain songs like Astronomy or Greek God or, like, even Heather or The
Astronomy
Heart That
is
Always Beats.
so good. Astronomy is, like, so good.
Astronomy is nice. I like that one, yeah.
Mhm.
But, like,
Should
what were you listening to, like, on your way back to class? Was it the Bourgeoisies?
No, I was not listening to the Bourgeoisies, I was listening to Footnote. I was listening to Footnote and The Exit.
I love The Exit, oh my
Exit's
gosh.
good too. The Exit is so
No.
underrated.
The exit I love, like, the drum part because I'm a marching band kid, so, like, that part is so amazing, it's so wonderful, I love that.
I love anything that has a really good beat. Like, this band is a little bit older, but the Smashing Pumpkins, I love them. They have this one song called Helium that's so good. I love the Smashing Pumpkins. I love the Smiths. Um,
The
I like
Smiths
Radio.
are really good, yeah.
Mhm. Back to the Old House, I think that's what that song is called. I love it. I love
Yeah.
that song specifically.
That is a really good song. No, I've been listening a lot to older music, so if we have older viewers, but the Beastie Boys, I
Mm.
don't know what that is. It's like rap and rock put together, and then it's so intriguing. But yeah, the Beastie Boys, that's one of them. Obviously, classic Queen. I don't actually listen to older music that often, but it really is just a lot of people being like, "You should listen to this. You should listen to that." But I've been listening to the Beastie Boys on repeat for the past, like, 4 days, and I don't know what's happening to me, but it's rap and rock, so you can't really go wrong with that, now can you?
I'm gonna have to check that out because I really like a cross between that. I don't know if you know who Dominic Fike is. Do you remember the guy who
I
had the really I
do!
love Dominic Fike.
Yeah.
I was
Was
his
the one
con
who's like, "Hemke, Hemke, me, oh my, mama's boy." That one?
yeah, mhm, yeah.
I know
I
that guy.
love his songs. If you like music like that, where like there's a cross between like rap and rock, I feel like you'd like Dominic Fike. He started off definitely in a more rap direction, but I think now he's definitely more sort of like rock. But his like latest album, I think it's called Sunburn. It's like a really good cross between like rap and rock. And the album before that, I forget what it's called, but it's like blue and like pink. I should know. I like literally am like the biggest Dominic Fike fan ever. Like I said, I went to his concert last year when he played in Baltimore. Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's when Sunburn had just come out. But, the album before that is also really good. Like, it's a like, that one I think specifically is a really good cross between, like, rap and rock. It's really good. Like, he's really good at electric guitar.
Oh my god, yeah. No, for me, I like anything that's indie. So, like, if there's a one band, it's called Saint Motel, and they're, like,
I
indie.
love Saint Hotel.
Really? You know who they are? Oh my god, I'm so happy. Like, I've been telling all my friends, "Listen to Save Motel," but, like, I love all of their songs, I love them because it's so like, all of the combo. And there's another one, and they're called The Crane Wives, and they're basically, like, indie folk, and their music is extremely symbolic. There's one, it's called, The Hand That Feeds, and it's basically talking about, like, leaving behind generational trauma. There's one called Never Love an Anchor, and it's essentially a mother having to leave her child behind so that the child can have a better life. There's The Moon Will Sing, and it's essentially like, um, I guess like a parent or like a generation. These are all very generational songs because they're all I can think of right now. But it's basically a parent, just shunning their child and not letting their child grow into, being their own person. So it's like even though the child, like as the song says, love them like the sun, the parent never let them shine with any light of their own. They had to rely on their parents' light to shine. And it's like, oh my gosh, lyrics are so symbolic. Everything has like a meaning. Like even like the guitar, like the riffs they use, it all has a meaning, like the gentle rocking of the waves and everything. So if you look up lyric videos, you're gonna find like all the symbolism because they'll say the symbolism and it's so awesome.
That sounds so beautiful. No, like, on a final note before our episode ends, I just wanna say that I love how music can just mean so much and ultimately just how much detail can go into it because that's really beautiful. Like, just for even down to literally, like, just a small, like, sound or sample, like, meaning so much and, like, contributing so much to the song overall, I think that's really beautiful, and I also feel like that's something that AI may not be able to do, like, reference our last segment. But, yeah, do you have any final thoughts?
I think that we covered everything. I'm gonna go home. I mean, not go home. I'm gonna go to sleep, and I'm going to have nightmares about Tesla bots. So thank you so much.
I'll buy a Tesla bot. I'm just kidding, I'm not gonna buy a Tesla bot.
you should make it be your next co-host, like the other
Oh,
co-host. We'll just
yeah.
replace it. We'll replace you with the Tesla bot. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, next episode, we'll have me replaced with a Tesla bot. I'm just kidding, but thank you for watching, everyone. We really hope
Yeah.
to see you next episode.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night or day wherever you are.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com and DeltaForce.net.